quite 2 years because when.
So they're both experienced counsel.
It's good. Well, Tina Frank is filling Jim Woodward's seat.
Recording has started.
Okay. She was on the school board.
Oh,
This
okay.
is-
That's time to begin.
And Kim is filling Cheryl Wake's position. And she's been coming to council for a year or two. It seems like forever.
Okay, it's time to start.
All right.
So call to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Watson,
Here.
Chair Vincent. I did receive an email that he was going to be absent. Member Strong,
Present.
Member Chisholm. Member Emmelhans,
Present.
Member Hughes.
Presence.
That is 4. That does meet our minimum for the.
Very good. So approval of minutes from the October meeting. I'm sorry, I wasn't here at that meeting. Do we have a second? Thank you. Meeting minutes are approved. Oh, that's right.
No worries.
On one time. All right, go ahead and
Motion to approve.
yeah, motion to approve.
First, second,
First and second.
all in favor.
All in favor, aye. All in favor, all of those opposed? Thank you. Gosh, darn. All right, public forum. Who's first?
Public forum is limited to 3 minutes. I will give you a 1-minute warning. First up, Chris Stewart.
Get my notes out before you start the clock. If I would have known, I only had like 10 minutes, or I would have brought a video of community development. Might as well pass these pictures around while I'm. Okay, so 30 years ago, so I moved in my house about 40 years ago. In 1991, I got a permit to build a fence out of cement and brick pillars with wrought iron. So I put that in according to community development plot map. They used the plot map because the city was surveyed in the 50s where my house was. So I built it according to code. At that time, there was a little tree on the other side of my fence. There were Siberian elms in my neighborhood across the street and next. They were all planted at the same time. They're over 60 years old and they're 60 feet, 50 feet high, 56. A few years later, one of the trees fell and crushed 2 of my cars. So now I was worried about these trees. I called Marilyn Lamb, code enforcement at the time. She came out. The tree was across my street, so the city cut it up. I said, we need to worry about this tree now next to my place because it's got a codominant split and it is going to split and it's a hazard to the public. She said, the city, we're not arborists, that I'd have to get an arborist to come out and say show that it's a disease and a danger. I did that. I have more. I have 3 or 4 arborists that say it's a danger to the public, it's disease, it's split, it could go at any time. I called code enforcement back then. They came out. Dugan Comer, the city attorney, didn't agree. My neighbor didn't agree because now the tree has grown and pushed my fence over. I spent a lot of money on that fence.
1 minute remaining.
Excuse me.
1 minute.
So Dugan Comer didn't agree. and said I needed to get a survey. Well, it's already been surveyed. The community development agreed with me. I had Engler, Commander Engler come out. He agreed with me. It's going to take me more than 3 minutes to talk about this deal. But everybody that's been out to my place, and there's been a lot of people, and they all agree with me except for the city attorney and code enforcement, because code enforcement is advised by the city attorney. And but we have a danger to the public. It's against code. And I hear that some other people are having problems with their trees, and that's why I'm here tonight. But I can go on and on. I have a lot more pictures. I have a lot more evidence. But this tree's going to go.
Not
This
this
is going to
time.
be held accountable. Do you have any? Anybody have any?
I'd like a little more information.
Okay.
So when you finish your sentence or a couple sentences worth.
Okay. Well, I tried to put that all within agreement. So community, when I got the permit, you got that part. I built it according to standards. My fence has not moved because it's concrete in the ground. It's built with footers with concrete pillars and iron fence. I couldn't find the pictures tonight, but I can bring that fence. The tree has bowed my fence in. It has pushed that fence in 2 feet. And it's grew at a bottom, a codominant split, diseased in the middle. It's past its lifespan. It's it could fall at any time. And when the wind blows, I go out and move my car in the middle of the night. Like I said, the commander, I've been in front of the code advisor McKinnon committee before, and pretty much everybody agreed. They sent out Commander Engler and another commander, and they agreed with me. The arborists agree with me. Everybody agrees with me except the homeowner next door. And because he says now, since it's grown onto my property, now it's my property. But I started this before it did that. I've been fighting on this thing for 30 years.
Is it on your property or not?
The tree was not planted on my property.
Is it
It
on
has-
your property now?
It has grown into my property. I started this battle 30 years ago
Okay, why don't you cut it down then?
because it's $2,000 to cut that down. So one part goes over my property, and I have trimmed that tree before. I've spent $1,000 trimming, but the main part that comes over, it cost $2,000. And we had estimates of 4,500 to cut down the trees.
So what is your objective? What are you trying to do?
What am I trying to do?
Yes.
I'm just trying to let everybody know the code enforcement would have done their job in the beginning. The tree wouldn't have grown into my fence.
Are you saying that code enforcement needs to cut it down? Or
I'm
that
saying the
needs
city needs to cut it down because it's a danger to the public. It hangs over the street. And when it falls, it's going to fall on other people's cars. And there's kids that play out there. And one of these days, if it falls on the wrong time at the wrong time of day, it's going to hit kids. It's going to kill somebody.
Yeah, I don't know.
And if he's, I invited Dave Lewis to come over, and in his notes from back then, they said I wouldn't let him on my property. That's a lie. So I've been holding this for a long time, but I try to ignore it, but I was invited here by some people tonight, but I hear some other people out house. And I just wondered how, but I have a lot bigger file that crushed my Mercedes and a Honda. And since I've had more.
different tree crushed.
Same tree. Oh, a different tree across the street planted at the same time. But this tree, this winter, I have pictures of a big branch that fell through the windshield of my truck outhouse and broke one of my concrete pillars. But I've been living here for so long, I'd rather just step away because it just causes me problems.
I'm sorry, we're at time.
Yes, you're always at time. But We got all the time in the world, but you know, can't. I'm the only one speaking and you don't have time? Okay,
No,
but
you're not the only one speaking.
you're good.
Next up, Dan Whipper.
Hi, I'm Jan Wyford and I live on Federal in Bellevue. And I came tonight because I had some people that called and said, would you at least come and talk a little bit, pay a little bit of attention because there are lots of tree problems. And I started thinking about it and I thought, you know what it sounds to me, and I just started attending these meetings. I don't know if this is the fourth one I've been to, third or fourth one. And what I hear over and over in these meetings is there aren't good processes for our citizens. I want to thank you for extending time for him because this is what I hear over and over. Processes aren't in place. People aren't allowed to talk. People aren't feeling like they're being heard. I've heard multiple people come in here and say, they're lying. This didn't happen. This is what they're saying, but they're lying. It's not one person. I've heard this every time I've been in here. Every time. And so my question is, or my statement is, I think this group needs to look at why people are continually saying they're lying. They took pictures and I told them it wasn't on my property and they still wrote me up. They aren't paying attention or they aren't, this is not once. This is the last 3 times I've been in here, 4 times. So there's a problem. There's a systemic problem. Processes need to be put in place so there's a definite, we're going to check this. Now, what happens if you get this note and you don't agree with it or there's a problem? What happens then? When does Mr. Lewis step in? When is he supposed to step in and go visit what's going on? This tree is on somebody else's property, apparently the neighbor next door, but it's growing into the other person's property. And you guys can't help resolve this. You're going to end up fining somebody a lot of money because you can't sit down and help get this resolved. Aren't we a city that should help people resolve things, not create problems, not create fines, not go to fines first, not go to taxes being levied because somebody didn't do something? I know we have to follow things. We have to make people responsible. But as a group, aren't you here to see that there are good processes in place, that they're being followed, and that our citizens are being encouraged to be here and speak up instead of being told, no, that's a lie. I don't think that's okay. Thank you.
Next up, Kim Ray.
Question, I'm sorry, Mark.
No, I'm sorry. I just didn't know if anything.
My name's Kim Wright and I live in District 4. I want to say thank you to you all first. It's not easy and I've learned that over the last few months. I have a couple of questions. I agree with Jan, Mr. Dewis. There needs to be process in place. Speaking to people in District 1 over on the hill, some people call it the thumb. They have been getting notices that they need to abate their trees and that type of thing. And then we hear Mr. Dewis saying there's no help on his neighbor's tree that's encroaching on his property that he can't do anything about. So there needs to be a balance between 2 different issues where the city's saying, a resident has dead trees that they need to get rid of. But then we have a resident here where it's damaging his fence, but it's not his property. So I think, Ms. Viper's right. We need to see, is this the the board that would help in coming up with a check and balance on that. And it's not easy to do because is this the group or do we need to work with another, board or commission to come up with that balance? The other thing that I have a question about is attended many of these meetings, and if I don't attend them, I watch them. And looking at the ordinance, and I know that you're looking at it again, there was wording changed, and I don't know if the wording's been changed again or not, and I have questions about that. Do I ask you about it? Do we go to council and question about it? Something that I'm going to learn about myself, but in one part of this ordinance that's going to be presented to council in the near future, everything was changed to may, but now in part of it, it was resorted back to shall. And I have a problem with that myself. So, why is it that the court is back to shall, which I've learned is, we will do that. It's not an option, impose a fine or a fee on a resident if they end up in front of the judge, opposed to it's an option where, our municipal judge has that option or not. So I'm concerned about that because I remember being here when that discussion was hot and heavy on what was going to be done, and it was voted on to be changed to may. And right here, when I printed it up from the agenda today, it's back to shall. Don't know if you're aware of that, but I'm concerned that it was changed. So.
Any questions? I have a question. What's the ordinance you're referring to?
It's on your agenda today.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, there's no number, but it is your agenda. So if you look at part B, it says. So it's under part B for the municipal court on the second line.
Oh,
Made to shall.
all right, thank you.
Last one, C and Dickerson.
Don't start the time yet. I am trying to be organized, but this is 1/10 of the documentation I have from my time on Code Enforcement Advisory Committee. And I'm trying to be brief. Okay, I'm ready. One of your responsibilities is to investigate the processes of code enforcement and make recommendations. In 2018, the basic process to be employed by code enforcement was confirmed by then Supervisor Commander Englert, as it is written in Title 15 and acknowledged on the code enforcement website as of this date. A 4-step process is preceded by a documented inspection and documented inspection for each step for a minimum of 4 inspections for any particular violation alleged. Only then could a summons and complaint be issued and the court decides the issue of guilt and the fine. The requested reinspection fee is a process issue and is in Title 15 as a requirement of each enforcement step and is included in the fines imposed by the court, if any. You need to examine the processes and make sure code enforcement is not exceeding its authority and is following code and documenting properly. This proposed reinspection fee is code enforcement attempting unnecessary and improper expansion of their power, and when they're not following the code as it is now. Case in point, violations on trees issued to a property owner that are not obviously a danger to the public or the public right of way. CEAC in 2021 and 2022 requested changes to the tree ordinance to ensure fair enforcement and encourage maintenance and planting of trees. We were assured that the city forester was consulted and advised on complaints about front yard trees because code enforcement admittedly are not arborists and cannot issue violations without an arborist opinion and are not allowed to address trees not a danger to the public right of way. Code does not permit code enforcement or require that a property owner has to hire an arborist to combat a notice of violation and abatement. Yet it has happened many times, one of which you were made aware of last meeting and one tonight. Focus on processes and needed revisions to protect citizen property rights. Restrain code enforcement to their limited power, which was the reason code enforcement was formed in the first place. Reject the reinspection fee. I have a whole bunch of documentation here. I didn't make copies, unfortunately, because I just ran out of time.
Are there any questions? Thank you. So that concludes the public comment for today. The next item up is the code enforcement significant event update on seasonal program.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing tonight? First, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the speakers that came tonight. Their feedback is always very valuable in providing insight into their frustrations. So I appreciate them coming to speak to us. This particular group asked for an update regarding the seasonal program. And so I wanted to just take a moment to provide some education regarding ordinance related to this program and some statistics related to it. So first off, I just want to go through some municipal codes just so that everyone in this, as part of CEAC, is on the same page regarding what code states. Specifically regarding the cutting and removing of grass and weeds. In the city, it does require that all grass weeds over 6 inches be cut back. We do look at this particularly on a case-by-case situation, and we do take into consideration any specifically and purposely planted landscape materials.
That applies to all property.
And then specifically with the municipal code regarding abatements, I wanted to go over the applicable definitions of abatements and how that works. So the abatement of nuisances in the city of Inglewood is hereby declared a local concern, and it outlines in the specific ordinance what those concerns are and what it entitles. And then what the abatement is subjected to. And so if you, I don't want to read these word for word, I'll let you guys read through these. And this particularly outlines everything that's in Title 15. Everyone good to move on? The abatement of a nuisance basically is to remove or stop, repair any of the destruction that may have been caused as part of a specific nuisance. And so that's the definition under municipal code for abatements of a nuisance. This outlines specifically in code what nuisance is, and it's a condition which injures or endangers the public health, safety, or welfare, which includes but is not limited to the following. Any activity, operation, or condition which after being ordered abated, corrected, or discontinued by a lawful order, and a lawful order can be the posting notice that we issue to a property, of an officer of the city, which would be code enforcement, police, the fire marshal's office, as well as the building department and community development zoning. Any of those lawful notices are given. And it also goes into further adding that it continues to be conducted or continues to exist in violation of any of the following. And it's very broad in this, any title of this municipal code. So any specific municipal code violation, whether it falls under the building department, the zoning department, health and safety, fire regulations, is a violation and can be considered a nuisance. Any other municipal code or regulation can be considered a nuisance. So if someone doesn't have, isn't following the proper code related to any number of municipal statutes. Also, any statutes of the state of Colorado, and any regulations of the state of Colorado. And this particularly comes into play regarding any health department regulations that are part of or outlined under the state of Colorado. Those can be also deemed a nuisance by the city of Inglewood. It is outright prohibited to have a nuisance in the city of Inglewood. And it shall be unlawful for any person to create, continue, or suffer the existence of a nuisance on any property under, and that should be changed to be more in line with today. Instead of his control, women can also own properties. So we want to make sure that that is something that's updated in the near future. The abatement authority, there's different abatements. We've talked about this in the past. So an abatement can be conducted by a variety of reasons. One being administrative abatement. One can be done by the city manager. The city manager can order the abatement of anything that may create a health or safety issue. An example of this would be we had a property that had a significant amount of trash, debris, materials that needed to be removed. They were placed into a dumpster. The dumpster was not paid for, and so the company removed the dumpster, and the party inside removed all of the trash, the organic material and stuff into the front driveway. We had piles of trash that were almost 6 feet tall that were rotting in the hot sun. And really caused quite an immediate health and safety concern. The city manager would order an immediate abatement of that particular circumstance. And that really falls into an exigent circumstance or an emergency. This also may come into play with a variety of other situations in the city regarding any kind of immediate health or safety concern. So that would be the city manager's authority to abate. This is really small. I should have broken this into 2 screens, so I apologize. This is the administrative abatement process. And so if after inspecting the property or with which a nuisance has been reported, that the enforcement personnel, and this specifically falls to who's been appointed, and that would be code enforcement, the fire marshal, would investigate the nuisance and declare an existence of that nuisance. This is the process that everyone has talked about. We do have a process in place. This is the process that is currently followed for all nuisances. First off, once we get to the point where we're going to need to issue a posting notice, we do photograph or take videotapes and write a report regarding that nuisance. We do have body cameras, so we were issued those at the beginning of the year. All of our current cases have pictures and or body cameras that are associated with any nuisance. So those are can be viewed by the courts or as part of public record. The responsible parties or parties shall be determined. And in the city of Inglewood, in previous definitions, it says owner occupant. So it's not just the owner's responsibility in the city of Inglewood to abate a nuisance or correct a violation. It does fall to the occupant of the property. So if they're renting the property, if they're on the lease, if they're staying there for a period of time, they are deemed to be the responsible party. This is where some confusion has come in regarding a 7-day informal process. It specifically says that the code enforcement officer shall have the discretion to informally abate the nuisance by speaking with the responsible party. And so that is the 7-day door knocker tag that we would put on the door. And we utilize those for smaller situations, such as somebody leaving their trash can on the street for too long, maybe not having trash service on a weekly basis. We can also talk to somebody to abate the nuisance. Let's say we're walking through the neighborhood and we notice somebody that has a concern that we need to speak to. We can talk to them and say, hey, we're going to give you a warning. Can you please not park your car on the grass in the front yard? And that would be considered informally abated.
Is that a verbal or is that?
It can be verbal or written. It just says informal.
And that is to the discretion of.
Code enforcement officer. Okay. It is not required. So just so that you understand, that is not required. Then it would go into the nuisance portion. And this specifically talks to if it has not been informally abated, then we have to go through this process that takes 14 days. And that we specifically have to, and I did include this in here, some of the concerns that we've heard from citizens is that they're very unhappy with the wording that's on some of our notices, that they're not very friendly, that they're very abrupt, they sound very rude, they don't understand it necessarily because it is specifically outlined legal requirements that we have to put in there. So then it goes into that specific aspect. So municipal code is actually passed through city council. They have the determination as to what needs to go through. However, the city attorney always consults on specific new code. The specific posting notice has been approved by the city attorney's office.
So can I ask a question? So and here is my takeaway from the people that have come to complain in the past. And I mean, I know that you've said, and I appreciate code enforcement doing this, educating the people. The problem is when we have a legal paper that is notice of violation, and you said we were using that as educational. That language is very strong for educational. If we're just doing educational, then I'm thinking we just need to hand them an educational, whether it says, code says you will do this, but, and just because you've said in the past, right, we get 95% compliance mostly, but when we're using intimidating language, I personally feel, I got a notice on my door that says notice of violation, it would upset me.
I hear what you're saying, and this body has directed code enforcement to go and refine that notice process and information. And so we're going to explore over the next several months why we lead into the grass and weed section of next year. One, making the front part more user-friendly, like saying you've received this notice. Yes, on the backside, there is specific language that is required. You can take one of the following steps. You can correct the violation and let code enforcement know. If you'd like to have an extension, please reach out to code enforcement if you don't feel like you're in violation. Something that's a little more educational on one side, but also serve as the notice, because that 14-day period, we actually extend out to like almost 30 days. So maybe having a dual process.
Well, it could do that, but I mean, if education is working, then we really don't even need to go into the notice of violation, right? And I mean, I think that, and this is my personal opinion, this board will have to decide what they want to do. But why even use the notice of violation at all unless you intend to follow through on the 7 days and then that's just my suggestion.
We do intend to follow up on that 14 days, which is the reason that if somebody has 2 feet tall weeds, that we need to issue that notice. But I hear what you're saying, and we want to make it so it's more palatable to everybody, but also include that I think that strongly worded messaging, this was the highest compliance rate that we've received this year. I think the strongly worded message may, one, intimidate people, but at some points it also is a little bit motivating for people that may not.
Of course, people got that notification. They went out to their yard to take pictures because there was not a problem in their yard. There were a lot of people that were upset about that.
Right.
So.
I hear that, and we can work through that for next year for the seasonal code process again. But I overwhelmingly heard the few folks that came in to speak in your opinion, and I know you hear from them as well, and so I value that takeaway.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
The next part. So the city has options regarding the abatement, and in the event that the nuisance is not corrected. And again, this applies not just to grass and weeds. I'm presenting this specifically because that's what you asked us to present on, was grass and weeds, but actually applies to all nuisance violations within the city of Inglewood. That if it's not taken care of in the 14 days, there is a notice to appeal as part of the formalized process. We did have 3 hearings this summer regarding grass, weeds, and overgrowth, and we had one specific to another nuisance property. All of those specific hearings were held, and it was determined that a nuisance was on the property at the time of the posting, based off of pictures as well as testimony and bond.
How many? Rita.
I'll get to the statistic of how many that's going to be. That's a great question. Abatement costs, and this is where if the city posts the property regarding any nuisance, including grass and weeds, and it's not taken care of, the city actually goes one step further in the process, which is discretionary. However, we make it a mandatory process. We do a 24-hour courtesy notice, letting them know that the property is still in violation, and to please reach out to code enforcement. If you don't, then the city will, and again, it has legal jargon on it that specifically says we'll abate the property, and then you will be responsible for the cost associated with that, plus the 25% fee to the property owner regarding the abatement of that nuisance.
Can I ask how that's communicated?
It's a reiteration of the formal posting notice that says your property was in violation. The property was originally posted on this date. You have 24 hours to reach out to code enforcement. I would say 75% of those 24-hour notices, people reach out to us and say, hey, can I have an extension or a couple more days? And then those that don't reach out to us, we go back out and re-inspect. After the 24 hours, it's usually 72. And then we would forward that to them.
Inspect them on paper? Is it, how is it communicated?
It's on paper.
And it's what, hung on the
It's hung
door?
on the door. Yeah, we're required to post it to wherever we would have immediate access. So if somebody, wherever their mail is typically delivered is what we utilize, that's what the Supreme Court has ruled, that we can go wherever a reasonable expectation of our entryway would be. If they had a gate on the front of their house, which there's a few of them that have short gates and has the mailbox on the front, we have to leave that posting notice on the front gate. So it would be wherever we would have the reasonable expectation to access. So usually at the front. I would say 99%
gone. They may not see that for a couple of weeks.
But they have already received a notice, a previous 14-day notice.
In the
So they will receive the notice on the door. The owner will also receive certified mail from us for the nuisance.
Of the 24-hour.
So the 14-day nuisance posting for major situations we do send out.
It's conceivable that they couldn't, I'm just playing it out because it's conceivable they couldn't get that if they weren't home. And
They would need to be gone for around 30 days because we really don't
from
go.
the beginning of it to the end. Yes, I understand that, but this final notification, they may not see.
No, and I do want to let you know, we work with everyone. Like somebody calls us and says, hey, you know, I've got this situation happening. Can I have some more time? Or I received your notice. Can we work together? This is what's happening. I'm going to be out of town, or my landscape person can't come for a couple of days. We just want people to communicate with us and not just ignore.
I understand. I'm trying to make sure that they're getting the communication on the front end too.
So,
Somehow.
and we rarely use our front door. We always go in through the garage. So, I mean, there's probably certain times of year we don't even open it. So it's feasible that somebody could miss one of those, right?
But again, they would have missed the code. And if that's when we get concerned, if we see that there's a posting notice on the door and we go back again 14 days. It's over, I guarantee you, it's always over 14 days unless it's a major health and safety issue. And we see another notice, then we start asking questions like, is this person okay? Do we need to have police come and do a welfare check? We're looking around to say, are there papers accumulated? Are there other things that we might need to look into? Or the property could be vacant, and which we have run into on a number of occasions where we do have one particular property that has notices on the front of it from 2 years ago.
That's a lot. So are these, they're in the Muni code. Does it tell in the Muni code when it was last updated? I mean, a 25% fee, isn't that fairly recent?
But no, I don't believe so. I think that's been a part of it. This particular fee is just to recoup any kind of cost the city ever lays out for something. We try to because we have to pay out the money, the invoicing.
Thank you.
It says the cost is 25%. Maybe charged against the real property.
Yeah, so what we attempt to do with finance, we don't deal with the money aspect. We just do the enforcement component and send that over to finance. Finance will send multiple letters to the registered owner of the property, and that's through the Arapahoe County Assessor's Office. That's what's been determined through code that we utilize to identify the owner. They attempt to walk down the aisle, especially where they have to leave them. Specific assessment against the property for the cost recovery, which is outlined in another section of the cost recovery.
If this begins with a renter, does the fines and everything continue with the renter, or does it go back to the property owner at some point? How does that determine what that change?
It goes to the owner. The actual assessment goes to the owner of the real property is the way it's outlined. And so whoever is on the county assessors would be considered the real owner. We had 2 properties specifically that the renters did not take care of. They also did not update any of their information on the assessor's website. So all of the letters were going to the renter's property under their name, which we always encourage people that rent out their properties to update their information. They can still own the property, but have it registered to a different address. And so that's been an education that we've run into. Specifically with rental properties. And I think, what did the last census say? Close to 50% of the properties in the city of Inglewood are considered rental properties. And so again, I think that's an opportunity the city as a whole has to work on making sure that we have a healthy and safe community for our renters as well. So this is the statistics specifically year by year. We did start the program 4 years ago. The program, which isn't encapsulated in this because we usually only do the 3-year survey. Last year, we had a long time before we identified a seasonal weed person, which is why you see the lower dip. And then that particular person we were very fortunate because they were identified as a sponsored position to the police academy. And so they ended their seasonal position prior to the end of the weed season. So mid-August, they went to the academy. So that's why you see a less amount of number for last year. This year, and we've been allocated in the budget for the last 2 years to identify 2 seasonal code officers. And so for a portion of this year, we had 2 seasonal people that overlapped, which explains the increase in the number. But also, if you remember the springtime, we had a lot of rains. And so a lot of properties just fell behind in their maintenance. And so that increased the workload on the regular officers as well, who were also conducting grassing. So how are calls received, or how did we specifically go about our business of grass weeds and overgrowth? And so I wanted to break this down that 90% of the grass weeds and overgrowths that were inspected were actually officer initiated, where officers went through a grid by grid, neighborhood by neighborhood, systematic inspection of every single property. We did inspect every single property twice this year to include front and alleyway. And I think a majority of the violations that we were finding that we were really having a difficult time getting enforcement was with alleyway inspections. And so we really worked to try and educate those owners before we took any formalized actions to get those grass, weeds, and overgrowth taken care of. We had 1% city referral, which is dispatch or a police officer or the city manager or city council reaching out to us to let us know that there was a concern that they wanted us to do an inspection. And then 4% were specifically citizen concerns. So those would be those that sent in voicemails or emails to code enforcement. And then you guys all know about Inglefix, the app. 5% of the complaints, roughly 250 Inglefix complaints came into the city of Inglewood regarding grass weeds. And then the statistical outcome, so we received 96% voluntary compliance with the almost 5,000 notices that we've given this season. That last slide only incorporated up to October. We still have a few follow-up inspections that we're completing just to make sure we don't have any further health and safety or fire violations. 4% were administratively abated, and those are properties that we did everything we possibly could to gain voluntary compliance. And 2 of those, as I told you, were landlord concerns related to the properties specifically.
Can you, is there a number for 4%? I mean, we're talking about 2 or 10, or how many people were actually abated?
So that's next. I'll hand up for you all.
It was coming, I didn't want to ask.
So this is going to be part of the presentation, but Councilmember Russell beat me to it because she was thinking proactively about this and for citizens, specifically regarding the abatements. And this was like Councilmember made this aware to everybody at the last CEAC meeting. But if you look at this, it really outlines who has the authority to do abatements. We did 213 administrative abatements last year. Out of that 213, 58 of them did not pay for their administrative abatements. And it has the breakdown of the special assessments of every single property in the city of Inglewood. The larger, higher dollar values that are in the thousands are administrative abatements that were done because of a health and safety, whether the house caught on fire and had to board it up. The property was abandoned, we were having so many issues. But a majority of everybody paid off of their abatement costs. One of the other really big ones, as you guys are aware, it's not on here because they paid it off, was that property in Delaware. Are you guys familiar with the 4,900 blocks off Delaware property? Code enforcement spent a significant amount of time at that property trying to get it cleaned up and in compliance to the tune of almost $30,000. They did sell the property. We did have a lien on the property, and that lien was satisfied and paid off. So the taxpayers have been reimbursed for that $30,000.
Actually, I appreciate you doing that because I printed those out for everybody.
So I went through that really fast. Was there any questions about that process or I hear what Russell and what the community has said about making the city notice a little bit more friendly, and we'll be working on that.
Can we, as a group, review some of that language? Can you bring it to us?
We did bring it here, and everybody did review the notice at one time and then gave it back to us to send a communication. So when we get done putting together that process, we'll bring it back forward as a group to review.
Councilmember Russell, she was talking about the wording. Is it not feasible to have 2 different forms? One for an educational and one for more hard, not hard, but more.
We can, but then you're now going to be tacking on another inspection, another process into it versus doing the if we go straight to posting, because then we run into the concern where there's, again, those 4% of properties who literally did nothing. They didn't go out and cut this entire season. So it's kind of a clock situation where if we do need to move forward with a summons or we do need to abate the process, we do need to start that process sooner rather than later because we're not getting back out to that community until 25 to 30 days after the vote. I think we can do some front end education like we have in the past in the Citizen magazine, the spring issue. I think we have 2 weeks to get into story ideas. So we can go ahead and run information regarding the weeds. We can do a whole, if you remember when the director of communication was here, we can actually put together a communication plan. Do you remember the 1-page document we did for off leash? And how to outline of what the objectives were, what was going to happen, what the concerns of the citizens were, and how we were going to meet those. That could be part of the communication plan so that we can make sure that we're also educating either through mailings, through publications, through social media, and that we're really getting that educational component out first and foremost, and then follow up with the enforcement. Yes.
I think it would be good to have, because so many people are changing their lawns over to natural grasses, native plants, that maybe somebody like Dana Liebert from who did the depot, and how that would work into landscaping and how to do those things without getting a violation on your property. Like, do you have to make sure that the taller plants are further away from the sidewalk, or just so people could have a bigger perspective of like the safety that we're looking for the community?
I think that is a great opportunity to kind of overlap the education component. I will give you some foreshadowing as to what's happening at the state legislature with some pollinator initiatives as well as some grant opportunities. I know that the city of Inglewood is looking at incentivizing at some point, and don't quote me, this is just a foreshadowing for everyone. Looking at incentivizing, changing over our law for some folks that feel that they want to, changing over our lawns to having specific xeriscaped or low water impact plants or more native plants. And so those are the things that are going to be happening over the next couple of years. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but that is the process that we're looking into for that.
Is there an education aspect to that for the enforcement team to know? You mentioned it before, but understanding what native grass looks like, understanding when that was intentional versus unintentional.
We try to look at that, and you can kind of tell from landscaping when it's intentional. We did have one property, and again, the burden falls on the owner. So just because you get a notice doesn't mean you're necessarily in violation. I know Jan has been very outspoken, and I've met with Jan. We have an owner and code enforcement. We somehow mixed up things regarding 2 properties that had some pollinating plants. One was milkweed. We did go through an education on that so that we don't include that process. But the owner or occupant of the home can always call and say, this is native grass, this is the name, this is where we've got it planted. We received multiple complaints on one particular property, again, over by Delaware, that has the strip between the street, and then they have a strip, and then they have the sidewalk, and they planted all native Colorado grasses. We received multiple community complaints about the grass and weeds in that one strip. We went out a couple times. I personally went out and met with the homeowner who showed me the invoice and the planting and the information, what it looked like before and after. And so yearly, they're going to need to just, if they receive a notice, reach back out.
Again, we're back to reactive versus, in other words, it's on the onus of the property owners to prove to you that these are native grasses versus us being educated to kind of understand what that is.
You're asking us to learn over 1,000 different bodies.
I guess there's something that would be a little bit less defending your life kind of thing for the citizens to as you say, we're moving more and more toward that. We're encouraging it as a matter of fact. So we don't want to stand in the way of people having to kind of have to come back and do that. I hear what you're saying about the varieties. There are patterns of that kind of thing versus, I know what what a dandelion looks like or something else.
And again, you can have dandelions, they just have to be below.
Right. I understand.
Is it possible just to like knock the noxious weed list for the state?
So
And-
again, the noxious weed list for the state is actually going away.
Is it?
The funding for that particular project has gone away, and the noxious weed enforcement at the state level has actually gone away. So that was a budget cut that.
Well, that's crazy, especially for farmers, because there are noxious weeds that would take over farmland.
Yep.
That would be very destructive.
It has gone back. The Department of Agriculture is no longer putting that onus on the state and is putting it back on the municipalities or the counties. So, and that's still in the development phase.
Is there a program within Arapahoe County?
There is not, that has not been identified completely. It isn't. And I will advise this.
Yeah.
We
Because
do recognize certain varieties. We know what certain look like. It's where we get into some of the exotic grasses and things that we don't know what that specific grass is. So it's difficult when one grass looks like another, and the only differentiation is maybe it's barbed on the tip where you won't know until it seeds, that seeds look different.
well, it seems to me that if you get a handle on the noxious weeds, and there aren't that many, but that you're in good shape.
I think to just rest a little bit on this, it wasn't so many properties from the front side that we were having the most concerns where we really are concerned with what has occurred, particularly in the alley section. And that's where we are coming into the significant overgrowth, the trees that were scraping apart. Those were things that we were finding more considerably out of control this year. And we know when stuff is intentionally planted, you can look and see there's rocks, there's xeriscaping, there's tightly clustered landscaping that forms an intentional. That's a good way.
So is it possible to do the informal process, like you knock on the door and you just do a friendly reminder and don't give them a notice of violation? And most of the people, the 95% are going to clean that up. The 4%, I mean, it becomes obvious who the violators are, correct? I mean, give them the notice of violation to begin with. And then that's the process.
I think we're trying to be more equitable because it's kind of like we're doing one way for one group and doing a different way for a different group. And so it's hard for us to keep the equal aspect. I will tell you that the seasonal code officer does, when they are in the neighborhood, do try to speak to people when they're at home. We are a community that has fixed income folks who like to recreate or older folks who are at the rec center, but we also have a significant amount of population that works more than one job. And so a lot of them are at home during the inspection time.
Right, that's true.
Which is why we've added weekend code enforcement officers so that we are here to answer questions when they do have questions.
Okay. I know it's not easy.
It is not an easy task. And I would say for the majority of this year, it was met with positive. And again, I know that people have a different tolerance level for enforcement, and what somebody would view as being insensitive or a bit harshly toned. Others are like, yeah, it's just a notice. It's a reminder. I'm just going to go take care of it. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to find that middle ground that will make everyone happy, as you know.
That's true.
And I gave you a whole lot.
More members have any more questions?
Was that helpful for all of you to kind of?
Oh, yeah.
Ordinance,
Yeah.
okay. Do you want to see more education regarding the ordinance stuff moving forward if you identify something that we presented and talked about it?
I think, we've had a couple people here talk about process. that we don't have a process, but it's clearly that we do have a process. And maybe what we need to do is communicate that more effectively in a more user-friendly way, that this is the process. And maybe in the spring edition of the Englewood magazine, which I read cover to cover, I think it's a very effective means of communication.
Did you get yours? So I heard what all the speakers were saying tonight about the process. And I just want to remind this group that each property is individually inspected and the totality of the circumstances of that particular property is taken into consideration. Not all properties are the same and not all cases are the same. So it's without going into case specifics, we have provided guidance to Mr. Dewis on his trees. So I know he's frustrated about the circumstances, but we followed the process. We did what we were supposed to. A determination was made. The prosecutor chose not to move that forward because of a variety of reasons, and the city attorney did make a rendering as to how that can be remedied.
I think at least what I heard from him is that who pays for it? That's the issue.
Trees are very expensive, and I know that this group had talked about trees extensively because it is very expensive. And when we are able to identify the owner of that tree or where that tree hence lies, we try to send tree cases to the court to adjudicate rather than code enforcement doing abatement of a tree. And again, that's his circumstance has been ruled on. I don't have any further to say on his particular case, but we
Who pays?
But we do have some incentives for cutting back certain trees like the emerald ash borer. That was something that this group took on, received funding from council. Thank you, Councilmember Russell, for funding that grant program for cutting down specific tree species. And we're looking primarily at the ash and the replacement top.
Brought up a good point, and I think it's my property is the same thing. I'm getting trees that are along fence lines that are migrating in my yard. They're not my trees.
That is a great point. And since you brought it up that way about your specific trees, the city unfortunately is not able to get involved with property disputes. And so trees that are growing on perceived property lines is a civil matter between neighbors. And you have these are the options that you have as an owner who has something that's on your property line, specifically trees, growing volunteer trees. We have those quite a few in the city of Englewood. You can wholly take care of the expense yourself. You can work with your neighbor to take care of the costs equally. You can take care of the whole cost and you can go back to a civil court and ask for a judge to order a partial payment or additional responsibility or ruling to have that tree adjudicated the cost between the two, or you can take no action. And so those are the steps that you could take for trees that are on perceived property lines. It's the same thing for fence. The city doesn't get involved with fencing on perceived property line. That's a civil property dispute. This goes back to the Wild West days here in the state. And so the remedies again are you would need to go to court, a civil court, for a judge to make that ruling and present your case in municipal code.
Who's responsible for trees in the right of way, like, between the sidewalk and the street?
The property owner. It's specifically outlined the property owner is responsible for taking care of any trees, vegetation in the adjacent right of ways. That includes the alleyway section behind someone's house or that little strip. I can tell you the city would not intentionally plant any trees or materials in that section.
I do know the city is taking care of one tree because when they replaced the sidewalk, killed the tree.
They killed the tree. And that would happen, for example, we got off topic from weeds to trees, but that's it. If you have a large tree and your neighbor is a large tree and the tree branch is hanging over into your property, you have the ability to cut that tree at the perceived property line. Knowing though, that if you kill that tree or injure that tree, you are civilly responsible. And so the owner of that tree can take you to civil court. So that's the caveat that we always give. You can't cut the branches at the perceived property line. Just understand that if there's damage done, there may be a civil penalty brought on you.
Can I ask a question? And it's not, but it's related to sidewalk. If a developer crushes the sidewalk, are they responsible for repairing the sidewalk?
I wish I had an answer for that, but typically, yes. And the city community development team would send out an inspector and work to remedy that situation.
So how would you notify them?
Angle fix is the best way of doing it.
Angle fix.
Or you can call them. I will tell you one thing, you can call the city as much as you want. There's no record of calling the city other than what you have. But if you do the Angle Fix app and you put in your request through there, one, you get a response from the department that is responsible for that. Two, it's a written record of the request that you've made. And three, it holds accountability to the city. So we can go back through and look at the Angle Fix app and say, okay, have they received a proper customer service response? Did they really notified in a proper amount of time? Was it routed to the correct department? If not, how do we fix that? And it holds the city accountable to make sure that we are listening to the citizens and trying to correct the violations or the concerns within a timely manner. And so that's why I like that.
Has that been featured in the Inglewood
It has,
magazine?
and it's on our webpage. We can work on putting that forward again. But
I think having a one page on Angle Fix is really valuable for people.
it is the best thing. I will tell you that
And that's done by computer, right?
it is done by computer or the app on you can get an app on your phone. You can take a picture of it, it geolocates it. And if it's routed, sometimes things get a little wonky with routing or responsibility. I will tell you that AJ and I, Officer Future and I, review every single alert to make sure that it's accurate. We were the original people that helped develop this process for the city. And so we do make sure that we are also holding other departments accountable.
Occasionally, it's dismissed or they say it was taken care of and it wasn't. Occasionally that happens.
And again, though, that's why you can go back because there's an audit log as to who received the report, who reported it or documented it. I can tell you that if somebody calls in a dispatch, they're using IngleFix for a lot of things. If you call into the Hub the City number, they enter your complaint into there saying so-and-so called, here's the concern. So that there's a record that somebody called into the Hub with a concern, and then citizens. So I'm a big fan of this, especially for other city departments that don't have a formalized report system like we do.
Put it in the utilities bill, an advertisement for IngleFix.
They have put lots of things in.
I know. It was a joke from one of the communication officer. Because that's what he kept saying. Oh my gosh, we keep putting everything in the utilities bill.
A lot of people don't read them, or some people get the electronic version. Yes, they can't get past the number part of the.
Yeah. That's usually a downer. Updates from the city council.
Okay, so I want to thank Code Manager Lewis for bringing forward, because I was going to bring this up. The only part that I want to talk about, and so first of all, this is a question to you. These nuisance abatements on here, are they all done by a hearing officer?
Hearing officers have to be requested by the person. A lot of these particular properties, or some of these properties, we haven't been able to locate the responsible party, or they have not come forward. So like vacant properties or vacant.
So if they don't request going to a hearing officer, then does it go to court?
No.
Okay, so this is one of the things that I would like this committee to look at. And I have 3 questions. How did we used to do this? The nuisance abatements. How how are we doing it now, which is kind of what we see. And 4 years ago, there was a major policy shift in how we do this. I will tell you, 8 years ago on this committee, and you weren't even here yet 8 years ago, Judge Atencio came to the committee and explained how nuisance abatements work. And so, I mean, this maybe is more efficient by going to a hearing officer, but I'm not sure that citizens' due process rights are not violated in that. I mean, Ms. Vonderwall, the last time she was here, said she appealed about certain things, and the hearing officer had not checked out with the county where the property lines were, and so that she was suggesting that the trees were not on her property. Whether that's true or not, I wasn't there. But the thing that I would like to see this committee do, because this committee can look at the process, I believe it would be a great idea to have Judge Jefferson come to the committee and just speak about what the process used to be for nuisance abatements and maybe ask some questions. But I think it's something that this committee could look into and make recommendations. I think part of the reason citizens come here is because you all do have authority to make recommendations to city council and advocate for the citizens in the city. So that's one thing that I would perhaps suggest that you put maybe on your list. I mean, you can talk about it if you want to put that on your list.
What was the third, you said, how did we do it? How are we doing it?
And 4 years ago, there was a major policy shift. And so, and I think if we got the judge in here, he could explain some things about maybe, and I also think, and I may be wrong about this, I think in the past, the court appointed hearing officers to hear them, but I think these hearing officers have been appointed by council and or administrators. Is that correct? Or
Recently, after we had these hearings, they were done by a court officer. The three that we had, the three specifically with grass, weeds, and overgrowth, were done by an officer of the court. And then that's when you guys appointed the next phase of hearing officers.
okay, all right. So I think you could just ask questions and figure out what's going on, and if you want to make any suggestions or leave it the way it is.
My judge, I mean, I know he was the mayor.
Well, because he's the judge, he is the one that runs the court, and
I see. I got it confused with the 40 years ago thing.
right,
Okay.
right. And I mean, I think he's been in 4 years, hasn't he? Been in, but he's
Then right
He said
now.
two terms.
in the middle of, he started his second term.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's been
so
right now.
he's been here 6 years maybe. So,
I think those are great questions and we can explore them. I can give you the quick answer on why we do it for grass and weeds. We don't do it for some of the other stuff. We send those still to court, but for grass and weeds, the feedback that we had received from the community, and if you recall, everyone was very angry about grass and weeds for several years, was that we were sending them to court. And when we sent them to court, they're still afforded the whole process. And so that process could be anywhere from 4 months to 6 months to move that through a trial. So I think that's where we were hearing the concerns was.
so the grass and weeds, have we changed that to decriminalize it like we did snow, or we haven't done that yet? I mean, and maybe those are things like for that, but trees, I think maybe are a bigger issue.
And trees, we always send to court, unless the property is abandoned. There is one abandoned property that the city is incurring the expense and is going to abate the property, because that's the one that we've had notices on for 2 years and we can't find the property. And we've tried every detectives, we've tried death certificate, we've tried so many ways to try and find this person, and we just have no options.
Well,
And this is going to fall on someone's housing.
right.
Are they delinquent at their taxes?
I can't answer that question, but I believe so. I believe the taxes were bought by a third party. And so if the third party, if there's so many years that if they
Yeah,
continue to buy it,
3 to 5 years or so.
then they can come on and take over the property. But they're not the responsible person at this time.
They're
That
not,
makes
if
sense.
they took over the property,
They don't take over the property. They pay off the taxes, kind of like a debtor.
right?
And then state law allows that person to claim the property after so many years of paying the taxes. But they're not the responsible owner. The owner on the deed is still the responsible business.
And then I just have one more thing, and if you all have questions, that's fine. This is a letter that Carson Green sent to city council after the last meeting. And I just thought, it would be wise for you all to have this because this is talking about the suggestions to the ordinance you're looking at, tonight. So I think I've passed enough for, supervisor list to have one. So other than that, there was an election, and so we're kind of in between councils. The current council will stay seated until December 4th, and then the new council will be installed on December 4th, I believe. Just the one thing that he put in here that the ordinance didn't change, and then in the second paragraph where it goes, we recommend that the language be modified so that the following points are included. The very first, well, really all 3 bullet points. In all cases, there should be the allowance for discretion, both in instances initiated by the city and instances initiated by the courts. Currently, the 6-5-2A language has the word may, but 6-5-2B uses the word shall. So it's not giving discretion to the judge to determine. He would have to impose the fine. And so when you all discussed this, I believe it was discussed that you used may in both situations. Is that correct?
That's what I heard. Yeah, and it is, B does still refer it to it shall.
Right. And then, I mean, there were other suggestions, like the second bullet point, the number of inspections that count towards a potential reinspection fee should be per type of violation per year. This means that if the reinspection fee has been triggered for a citizen for an outdoor storage violation, those inspection instances would not be counted toward a potential reinspection fee for something else like a right-of-way obstruction. Was that necessarily put in the ordinance or about the violation? I don't remember.
I don't believe it was at first, but then there was the second draft that came back out that included that information.
Okay. This is the second draft, right?
Yes, this is the most recent draft that was put out, but I don't, just if my memory serves me correctly, so Carson had this letter, but I don't think this group voted on this particular letter, accepting the letter. It's just suggestion prior to the letter. If I,
This letter was, I think this letter was authorized for Carson to send to the city council.
Because, yeah, I'm remembering it the same way.
I think what he, if I recall, and maybe Officer Futro remembers, we might have to go back to the minutes. If I recall, this group directed him to write the letter, and then he was going to bring the letter back for you guys to review. And so this is the letter that was supposed to be reviewed.
So if that,
And then I think, if I remember correctly, Chair Watson, I think you said that you were going to redraft the letter.
Oh, that's right.
okay, so, but if you all were in agreement with these points,
we were, we should review it and then get an approval of that. We put that down for the next meeting. Because I assume we're not going to do it tonight.
Yeah, it is on the agenda for tonight, but
So just say.
Oh, it is on the agenda?
Yeah.
For tonight.
we do have 40 minutes left of the regular.
Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah.
I get clarification still that if the second bullet point here, there is no verbiage in code in regard to this. Is that correct at this point, or is there, because I'm not seeing anything in the code information. The only thing I see is A and B, and I don't see anything referencing those. Pardon me.
So I think that underlining means that this is going to be the change in the code. So once this is approved, this would be the recommended language for the code.
But there isn't anything from that second bullet point in here, is there?
I didn't say-
You guys didn't approve this went forward.
So we would need this to be or added to this, is that correct?
Whatever your recommendations as a group, if you want to vote on each of these again or go through each one, just to make sure you're on the correct page, that would be my recommendation, because this was written, you're a different group. We have new leadership and new members, so maybe that's something that you guys want to.
So for clarification, looking back at our notes, on the July 19th meeting, it was voted that Chair Green would draft a letter at that time for review by this group to be moved forward to council at the August meeting. By the August meeting, Chair Green had resigned and the letter was never done.
So that is.
So whatever letter was sent to council was sent without the approval. Because it was never
But I
brought
don't
forward
know
to.
that he necessarily sent it to council. He sent it to me as the council liaison. I didn't act on it because I knew that this board hadn't finished.
Yeah,
that.
he sent it off, I believe, after he resigned as a citizen.
Okay. All right, but if it's on for tonight, let's see if we can get there at this point. I mean, it might take, my guess is it's going to take a little bit of going over to talk about this, but let's go ahead. So continue. Do you have anything else?
I think if you go through the whereases, it may answer those second two. I didn't, other than that, the stuff at the end is just, it's in every single ordinance.
Stuff in the end.
The general provisions, the central provisions.
Oh, okay. I see.
And on that, because I know you brought up shall and may, I do have notes that at the May 17th meeting, there was a recommendation. It was moved by Chisholm, seconded by Emmelhans. It was all in favor. The wording in section B was going to be kept as shall, that the court order shall, and then the other wording need to be changed to may. So there was a motion that was put in May to keep that the court shall, but all the other sections put in as may for discretion on the officers on the inspections.
That voted on and approved then?
Yes, that was voted on and approved at the May meeting.
So where is the May go?
So B was what? What did we want to change, or did we want to change this?
So the court shall assess the city reinspection fee as restituted to the city when requested by the prosecutor in section B. Section A, the second line, the person causing to contributing to a violation shall pay. That one was voted on to violation may pay on every successive inspection. And that was based on discretion of the officer for that inspection.
So which one? That's B.
Where's May? A. In A.
So A currently, A said shall. Yeah, and that was voted to be changed to may. Section B
May.
was to be kept as shall.
So this was, if you don't mind. Specifically with A, because it deals with not just code enforcement, it deals with a variety of city departments. Council wanted this group to review if they felt code enforcement was something that this group wanted to move forward as part of the reinspection fee. This was going to move forward because the other departments need a way to still charge for inspections, on which some currently are that have been approved by council. Correct. The inspection fees and the list of fees that you approve every year with the budget.
Right, so the city may impose a reinspection fee on a property owner, the other person causing or contributing a violation. Uniform. Achieving violation is not remediated after issuance of notice of violation in 2 city inspections to determine compliance. Well, and then it establishes in this ordinance that it's a $55 reinspection fee. I mean, I think that this committee agreed they weren't upset about the reinspection fee, but it had to follow these things here.
And I think it meant if this letter or what was outlined has been captured in here with the may and the shall. The shall with the court part was specific to this group because they wanted to make sure that they were ordering an inspection, that the court was waiting to collect that inspection.
So, and I'm okay because city council will talk about this with whatever you do, but when you put the court shall assess, that is not leaving discretion to the judge whether to charge the fee. It is forcing the judge to charge that fee regardless. And I mean, I know there was a case where the judge had to assess a fee and the woman says, I have no money, send me to jail. And she said 3 or 4 times, I have no money. And so I think, one thing we need to be cognizant of is the judge does generally have discretion. But that's all up to you.
So can I ask again, what, I'm confused as to what you said that Member Chisholm had said what or agreed to.
So at the May 17th meeting on version 1 of this, in section A, it reads, after an initial inspection and reinspection of any property in a calendar year, the property owner or other person causing or contributing to a violation shall pay the city reinspection fee for every successive inspection of a parcel by city staff to determine compliance with the Uniform Development Code, Environmental Codes, or Inglewood Municipal Code, Title 56, so on and so on. That section was voted on to remove the shall and it to be put in as a may. And the reason for that is discretion that for some properties, just 2 inspections would not be enough for the fee. So that was changed to may to allow discretion of the officer if that was a charged visit or not. Section B stated, in any municipal court finding or plea of guilty or no contest, or in any deferred prosecution for property related violations, the court shall assess the city reinspection fee. And that was voted to be kept as shall and not change that to may. And I don't have the notes on there, but if I remember right, the reason for that is because this is after they were found guilty, pled no contest, or received a deferred judgment. If they were found not guilty, then there would be no fee.
Is that still true according to the reading of that?
Yes, the way that I'm reading it would be after the guilty.
Yeah,
Or no contest.
yeah,
It would be after the
Discussion
budget.
we had, and that was why we went to the shall, is because we figured that it was an after.
It's been adjudicated already, and they would have agreed to the extra inspections to make sure that the property comes into compliance, kind of like probation.
So that was the main meeting on version 1. What you have in front of you is version 2 that was changed from the main meeting to reflect that vote, and then it has just been pushed off.
Is this the same or different than that? This is where I'm just.
This is the updated version with your recommendations from this committee from May. And I know part of the concern that was brought up is the difference between the may and the shalls. And the reason they're different is because of what this group voted on at the main meeting to reflect what's currently in front of you.
This wording changed on B, not just the shall, but the wording itself changed from what was in the
The
main.
A section did get smaller, and that was done by city attorney. I think they removed some of that from my understanding because since it was no longer shall, it was able to be reduced.
But I think the B section got changed a little bit also. It's worded differently than it was.
Yeah.
In the main meeting.
Because it just read different to choose.
Yeah, because you all, the B is different than May because of the feedback that you gave specifically regarding the adjudication where a guilty plea, basically somebody has been found guilty or is guilty.
Well, but it's a or in any deferred.
The deferred judgment would be, let's say this is, deferred judgment's used a lot, especially with code enforcement and other minor violations. It's your first offense. You've never really been before the court. You go ahead and take a plea agreement to go ahead and rectify it, prove to the court that you've done it, and then they defer it, basically remove it.
Right.
But if they defer, if it's a deferred, then do they still have to pay the fee?
They probably won't because they would have lost the property and compliant with it.
No, because it says shall, so they would have to pay the
But
fee.
it does say shall.
But
And to include deferred.
any judge would have discretion to do whatever.
Because it says
And we
shall.
put shall in there, the judge will not have discretion. He will have to charge.
That's why the may was brought up as opposed to shall.
Well,
And again, I'm not for the, the guilty or no contest. I understand it, just the deferred is.
If the deferred is guilty,
He's played good.
I get that, but they have to impose a fee on a deferred, would they not? Would the fee be imposed every time we defer?
If you have the word shall. Or
Yes.
I know that. That's my point.
Well, they would have already made a guilty plea in the deferred portion. I think that's just a legal terminology. You could request to have the deferred portion released.
You could vote again if you wanted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it sounds like we've got enough questions. We need to revisit this. How do you feel about it?
I'm okay with the second one.
Second.
I'm okay with it the way it is. I do have some questions about the second bullet on the letter. I don't understand that.
Remember this, Sonia?
I am just.
I remember us wanting the may instead of shall, but then it's evolved because we found out that it was just not about code enforcement, it was about other things. And then it opened up more questions, so.
Let's defer this until the next meeting so that we can go over this in more detail. We have time basically, I think, right now to do that, don't we? This is mainly dealing with spring and.
It's up to you as to what you guys would like to do. I know that we were going to make the recommendation because it's been done in the past to suspend the December meeting because it's typically around the holidays and then reconvene after the first of the year. It's up to you if you want to. It's just there's other departments that are also been waiting to have this moved forward, which have already approved, have gone through and made recommendations as well regarding this. So it's really up to this group. And if you want to change, because I think this encapsulates everything, most everything in the letter except for that one subsection. And if you all want to change it from shall to may, that's your discretion. I will tell you that speaking with the judge, he probably would appreciate having more discretion. And I know Councilmember Russell has also spoken with the judge regarding discretion.
So he wants that.
Well,
I would say the court would want that. Yes.
I think they would appreciate to have the flexibility to be able to do that.
Why don't we do it then?
Can I interject a question here? And this is going back to something that we discussed last meeting, kind of off the cuff. This is a ruling that affects not just code enforcement, but it affects fire. What other department? I mean, this is not just us.
Fire marshal, which the fire marshal's office already has it built into their code to charge fees, but this is to make it consistent throughout all of code. The building department also does inspection fees and reinspection fees as well as community development licensing. This is really just to unify so that it's not all over in different parts, but to unify all of those inspection fees into one.
Why is this just on us to do? Is there no other citizen committee or advisory committee that addresses the fire marshal and those types of? It seems like we're making a final decision for other departments.
No,
Just making
just for
the
A
council,
recommendation.
recommendation of council.
Right, a recommendation.
That's our job.
Right. And then they in turn will discuss and decide whether it's feasible or not. We're making it from our point of view, not from.
Okay, so that seems that other areas are affected by this decision.
And that's what the city council would be
Right.
overseeing.
And they'll take
So
that
if
into
we
consideration.
decide, we say may for this instead of any shalls. Then they would discuss it and go, no. This one just isn't gonna make sense. We have to do this shall. And then that is.
Well, that's fine. I just, it felt weird last time we were talking about it. It seemed like this was fell into other departments in addition to code enforcement.
So does this really apply to the nuisance type thing? So it would be the same departments that are in this paper that you handed out about that? Is that?
The way that it was explained by the city attorney is it really it unifies all of the departments that are supposed to collect fees for inspections. This would apply specifically to nuisance, but again, if they're not going to have more than one violation over the over the calendar year, then the citizen would necessarily need to be concerned. And again, if it's May, we're not going to be out there charging fees. Again, we've gone through our whole process to move this forward, and it's either been abated or it's been moved to the judicial system so that they can adjudicate the process and move forward from our side.
Now, let me clarify. You say that the court would prefer shall as it is here.
No.
No,
They prefer may.
they would prefer May because then it's up to the discretion of the judge
Okay.
whether to charge someone or not. I mean,
Okay.
it's, the outline is here, but then he's given the discretion. If we put shall in there, he would have to collect the fee from everyone. I think, I don't know, I haven't been in court very many times, but I do think that there are probably people, especially on some of these abatements, if they're living on a fixed income, it would be difficult for them to pay.
So, well, I think if that's what they would prefer, why don't we go with what they prefer? Why would we choose not?
Willing to reconsider it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to make a motion then to change it to the
May.
word to read May?
So it would be, for both 652.
Right.
A and B.
Okay.
We would change out the may or shall for may.
For me.
Currently, you have the A portion already changed to may, but B we didn't change.
So it would just be for
So
B.
just in this draft, yes, it would be
Yes. Just be for me.
So
I'll make a motion. I motion that we change the wording in 652B to read the court may assess the city reinspection fee.
okay. All of those opposed, or all of those for?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so
Now, just clarification on that. I'll send this back to city attorney with that change. Are we also sending this forward that we approve, and can this be now sent to council?
yes,
That's a second. We should do that.
Yeah, if we want to
Yeah.
do a second motion to, once that change is done, that it's approved to be forwarded to
Okay.
council.
Can I ask another question?
sure.
I don't understand the second bullet point here. if somebody has a thing, got a notice for weeds and there's a reinspection, 2 visits, whatever, okay. But it's for weeds. It's not for your garbage cans sitting on
No, and you're actually talking about the letter and not the ordinance,
the.
so.
I'm talking about the letter.
Yeah.
How does this apply to this?
Well, the first bullet point was the
Right.
draft that we were
I
making.
got that.
So we need to fix that.
Right. Well, I just don't want to send this to council.
We'll go to the site. No, this isn't going to council.
Yeah, that's not going to count.
This isn't going to council. We're sending a draft here where we're going to ask that it be sent to the city attorney to review. And then once it's reviewed by them and then we're told it's okay, wording's okay, then we recommend that it goes to the city council. Then they take up the issue.
Right, but I want to discuss that before I do that.
We want to discuss.
That bullet point, what does that mean? I don't recall any of this. I don't know how it applies.
I think what I'm hearing is we don't need to worry about the letter, but not all of this was incorporated into.
Oh, okay, fine.
So let's go ahead and finish
Okay, fine.
this one.
All right.
Okay. Is there a motion? What was the second motion?
Well, I'd say it.
Oh, to send it to the city, that's right.
Can I ask a question before you go ahead and do that? So it could be the reinspection fee amount on the backside in section 2. It says the reinspection fee created by this ordinance shall be $55 for each inspection in excess of 2 pursuant to each issued notice of violation. This fee shall be included in the City of Englewood Comprehensive Schedule fees and rates. But that second bullet point in the letter about making sure it's only about the same thing, whether it's weeds or because it's like double jeopardy. I think
Right.
that's part of the reason I think that was discussed before. Because I don't know, and Dave, you would know this, a lot of times if people violate one community code, do they generally tend to violate others as well?
It would be different. Under the specific nuisance code, this would apply to the specific nuisances that they were cited for. And so we would approach it from that aspect. If it's a whole different case or not similar violations, then it would be a completely different circumstance.
So is it possible that they could have 2 inspections for one thing and then also 2 inspections for something else? Is that a possibility?
It could be. So let's say we're dealing with the nuisance and then now citizens complained about the tree and we go through the whole tree process. That would be a completely separate case. So they would be separate.
But they wouldn't be mixed and matched.
No, it's not a mixing match.
Okay, so
In something?
That written somewhere.
It's part of the process.
It's just part of.
it's just part of the process. Okay, so this doesn't really
Worry about
apply.
enumerating that or writing that in some.
No.
Is that correct? I'm just trying to make sure, because you kind of brought it up, Rita. I just want to make sure we're addressing it. Right.
And this is really putting the ownership of that reinspection fee on how much it's going to be. And that city council would determine, we're doing $55 now, but that schedule of fees can be changed annually by council, which they regularly do based on a variety of factors.
But our acceptance of this is not tied to.
Gotcha.
Because it's a reinspection issue. New issue, that's new reinspection.
Right.
That's not how it reads. No.
Right. It sticks with the same.
So that negates paragraph 2.
We start the whole process. When a new case is opened, that case is closed, we start a whole new case and a whole new process.
Right. So that's a moot.
Yeah, that sounds like that would be.
We need a motion.
We do. So we've already made the motion to change the May. Now we need a motion to send this to the city attorney. Is that correct?
So motion to city attorney has been done to change the wording in paragraph B from shall to may. second motion is once that wording is done, city attorney can send this forward to council for their.
Does anybody, would somebody like to make a motion? What he said? Do I hear a second?
Make a motion.
Second?
Cues.
All of those, I was making sure he was writing it down. All of those for,
Aye.
all those against, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so we will make that, we made that request. I don't think there was anything else in here that we needed to deal with. Because both the reinspection fees. So, Rita, do you read, is that, I mean, is that the way you read it as well? Okay. What's that? Oh, no, I know we did. I just, since David pointed out that, or Manager Lewis pointed out that we probably won't do the December meeting because of holidays. Let's just get it. So let's go to 7. So the communication subcommittee, the nominations for I was not here at the last meeting. Did we do anything?
No, this all got tabled from last meeting, but from 2 meetings ago, we did have a nomination for Member Hughes, that she was interested in participating in that.
Okay. And who would the second be?
We did not make anything of it.
There's one right.
I know. I was gonna go, let's see who's missing. So Mike loves the volunteer.
You can appoint just one person for now.
Is that okay?
I could do it.
Let me, my thing is, and you brought it up, code manager, is that we probably need to address the timeline of getting something in the
Right.
spring thing.
Yeah.
I think that's going to require a little more urgency to putting a subcommittee into place. So we can kind of get on top of that. And I would be willing to work with you on that, just to get the ball rolling.
And I do want to let you all know, if you don't mind, really fast. The commitment is very different than the way it used to be prior to the citizen in the last year and a half. The subcommittee would write articles, and this particular one, that's not necessarily needed. It just needs to be a story idea or a few bullet points that you'd like to consider, and then all the editing and copyright is done specifically by the
Crystal have his.
we have a Slate Communication that does work on that. They do it in-house.
Yeah, the communication director is the one.
So they take care of all the copy and the ideas, and they usually will send out a form saying, what kind of story idea do you want to cover? What are you thinking about this? Who should we contact? And so that's kind of, we usually in the city will put together a couple bullet points of what we want covered, and they will do the research and do the editing, the artwork and everything that would go along. So it's much easier than it used to be.
Okay, so do I contact Chris or
Work with me on.
I'll work with you?
So Member Hughes and Member Emma Hines are the 2 members.
Do you want to do it?
Motion or this one?
Do we have to do a motion?
It's up to you. You can
No, it's
just
just a volunteer.
So, yeah, I'll work with you all in the next, if you have some time. I know it's the holiday next week. We are on kind of a deadline as to,
Do you know what the deadline is?
I have to look it up because I just received the email today.
Okay. Okay. we'll get
And when
that
does
done.
it come out? Does it come out in February?
It actually comes out in the winter for the spring. So it always comes out the season before because the biggest production portion is the last half. If you've read through it, is all the recreation programming. And so they
Yes.
have to put that in place so that people can register and sign up for it.
Right. So I think it comes out like February.
February.
So would we have time, if the subcommittee did some preliminary work, would we have time to bring it back to the committee for review? We'd have to kind of move forward.
Probably the deadline, which is January, if it comes out the first quarter, right?
So it has to be, I think it's submitted by the end of this month. Then it goes into the editing and creation process for December. A variety of departments review it, and then it gets sent to publication before the first of the year, if I'm correct. So we're always 6 months out.
match.
It is just.
Remember you, oh. Sorry. I had something in my, I still have something. Member Hughes, you'll get with, Co-Manager Lewis?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is going to be a fast turnaround, so we can look forward. You.
Do you know what the deadline is?
Yes.
Right.
Are you good then?
Yeah.
Okay. You're good to help?
Yeah.
It's a good idea, man.
What's the code section? I just run that one.
So the code actually was talked about in the spring for the communications committee of what different things that you want to get out to the public. So I think that's something that you could work for the spring edition pretty quick.
Okay,
And then focus maybe after the first of the year on what would be put in that for the summer.
all right. We'll talk about those things, about how we address those things.
Priority list looked like it's still from July. Is it in here? Put this or that out or? Oh, there it is. It's on the back, sorry.
That also deals with the communication.
Yeah, we'll need to redo that. Let's move that one out. Because while we have the baseline here, we probably need to reset our priorities based on that we have. Summer season will be coming up. Magazine will be out. So,
I'm not sure these are going to be 2023 priorities any longer.
yeah. Well, we moved them around earlier in the year. And then we took some out, put some in. Actually, we took two out last time. Yeah, we'll revisit that one and go over that after this. But you have your direction. We'll close the manager list and then we'll.
We'll update that in January. Is that what you?
Well, we'll update the priority, the priorities.
Which I think will be of any business in January. Talk about, I'm correct, the communication subcommittee and to talk about priorities. So I think that's a good opportunity to start the new year.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I agree. Do agree. Okay, moving on to the unfinished business.
Minutes left of our regular.
Yeah. Reevaluate the need to change the Title 6, Section 5, Section 652.
That's what we just did.
Yeah, we did that. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Review the weed posting and process.
And so I reviewed that.
Right.
So I think that's done. And then the posting, the notice, we're going to work with communications and have that hopefully to you all by this spring for review.
The wording.
More friendly. Okay, the next section is new business. Review and approve letter for city council on e-bikes. Everybody has a copy of the e-bike book? So, I mean, is that you?
Yes, that was me. It's a combination of state law, Denver law, and recommendations from a bicycle lobbyist group as well. And it's just my draft letter of what I think would be the safest thing for our community.
You derived all this from the state laws.
State law, Denver, and there's also a Colorado lobbying group called Bicycle Colorado.
Mhm.
So it's just a little operation of what is recommended
Okay.
and general things.
But I assume everybody wants to read it. I haven't read it all.
What is the difference between a class 3 e-bike and class 1?
It explains there on the motor and how it works and the speed limits the bicycle goes up to. And
More powerful.
more powerful and the maximum speeds.
So is it state law that the class 3 bicycle, or the electric bicycles have to have a speedometer?
For the class 3, yes. That is correct.
Look like you're about to say something.
If I can ask just clarification, is this group seeking to set a policy, a law, or are you looking to provide education to the community regarding e-bikes?
Policy.
Did Mike bring that up? Or did you bring it up?
I
What
think
was-
Mike,
I think Mike brought it up.
What was talked about is 2 meetings ago and reiterated last meeting is that with the amount of e-bikes coming in to the city and the different grants and funding, and with the different classes, that there are some safety concerns. And because there are multiple different boards and commissions that could look at this between Parks and Rec, Code Advisory, is that the group was going to reach out to council through a letter with these recommendations of stuff that may need to be looked at and seek council's discretion on what board and commission would review this to actually propose possible new municipal code in reference to e-bikes. If that be Parks and Rec or anything else.
So would e-bikes be privately owned or rented? I mean, the bicycles you see, are they e-bikes or are they just regular bicycles?
It's hard to tell on a lot of them.
most of them are currently owned. There are some rental programs in Denver that have not made it here. It's just not feasible for them to do business here anymore right
Well, you see them sitting around. On
Yeah.
corners, more scooters than
now. Everyone's like,
bicycles.
can you come pick these up?
Yeah, where they come, but they have to come by and pick them up.
Mostly the scooters or the other bikes, yeah. We
There's more scooters now, but occasionally I still see bicycles.
they usually run out of charge.
Yeah.
I do know Littleton has authorized them and has put them stations in major hubs. So I know Littleton has some of the scooters.
And most of those,
It's been several years
It
ago
has.
that we talked about it and then it just didn't get traction then. So
I'm just asking clarifying questions. What is it that this group wants? Do you want to seek council's direction as to who should be working on this project? In the meantime, do you want to maybe do, because this sounds very educational to me, but maybe this is something that we can, that the committee can move forward as one of the communication safety concerns that we can do, especially since we patrol the parks. But are we, I guess my question is, are we looking for something to regulate where we may not have a problem? Or are we trying to proactively regulate something so we don't have a problem? And is it needed? I guess those are the questions that I would ask.
since it was Mike's idea, something that might be good to hear.
Yeah, I think this might be able to give some perspective from Mike.
Yes, because I'm not sure what he was looking for on the law versus policy. But the recommendation or not the recommendation, the question might still remain for council. We could still look at this, but who do they think should be? I should be the ones that make the proposal. Should there be a procedure? Should they consider a law?
Yeah, I mean, a letter could be drafted to council that said that this committee agrees that there is the potential with the increasing number of e-bikes for issues to arise that we may need to deal with. And therefore would ask direction on how, what committee should take the lead on addressing this and creating policies. And that to me makes sense. This is good stuff. This is.
Yeah.
This is like a
Absolutely.
totally big educational piece that we could technically revamp and push out as a communication in some way or format.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, I think it would also be helpful to put places where people can ride e-bikes. Wouldn't it be nice to have something like, well, I have an e-bike, but I haven't ridden it for since we moved here because I'm afraid to be on the streets. And I don't know exactly where to ride it.
The designated.
Yeah, like what would be recommended places to ride it for safety?
Well, maybe we ask for direction. I know that we're running out of time. I have some information regarding some development things that the downtown district is looking at doing to try and connect bike paths and a bigger area to move into the Cherry Creek area. So, you know, that's some things that are in the works that's going to be moved forward in council. So I think that's a great idea. I think maybe seeking direction of council, drafting a letter, like seeking direction as to who should take this on, because it really could fall to a variety. It could go to the transportation subcommittee. It could go to here. It could go to the parks and it overlaps so many that.
Right.
No,
And sustainable.
And this is, it overlaps so many different groups.
So for the, we'll need a letter off to be drafted. Then we'll have to vote on the letter. Right?
That's how you guys have done it in the past, is to vote on the letter. If you guys do consensus, we can, on your behalf, send a letter to council saying you've identified a potential concern. CEAC is seeking direction as to which committee should review e-bikes and processes and policies. And we can be done with this
Does that
until
work?
January.
Is that okay? Okay. Is you,
Or Rita, we don't even, you guys technically don't even need to do any of that.
I could
Rita can just
bring
do
it
it
up
in your
during
council.
member choice, yeah.
That would probably be the best way of doing it instead of doing the whole formality.
Okay, actually, that might be a good idea. I can just bring it up during council members' choice and then council can decide what they want to do.
okay. Thank you.
And maybe it's a collaborative effort between us and transportation. Us.
The bike and transportation? No.
Just because we brought it up doesn't mean we necessarily have to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, no, that's the question is who do they think it needs to be done? And if so, who?
Okay.
So, no, I thank you. And hopefully I can watch it on TV because every time I try to watch it, it's every single time.
Somebody told me that I wasn't even thinking about it. See you on TV all the time and I'm thinking, no, on TV. And then all of a sudden I think, oh, you're too.
I try to watch every meeting, but the last couple of months, it's been rather tough.
Last time, but I've got a committee member choice.
Oh, yeah, go, okay, yeah, let's go. Right.
It's more directed to Dave. Dave, I just happened to be on next door. This came up. Hello, Englewood, Billy G here with an exciting update. New signs are going up in our off-leash areas, yada, yada. These are the signs. Where do we as a CEAC committee engage with the process of, is this something that we would get an opinion on or have an opportunity to process?
It's more of a parks and recreation. They've taken on
Okay.
the direction of all of the signage and the parks process.
It's CEAC in here, that's why I asked.
Code enforcement,
Code enforcement.
specifically around the legality of enforcement was the only reason we were consulted was, do these signs look okay? Can you enforce them? And that was our involvement.
So did they change them again?
They didn't change them. They made them more user-friendly, more readable, larger. The bigger question was, where do I find the rules? And so we really put in a QR code so that people can scan that and find the list of all the rules for the city of Inglewood Parks.
Is there any other member choice?
I would like to make a recommendation that we extend the amount of time for our citizens that take the time out of their schedules to come here and talk to us, that we give them at least 5 minutes to be able to talk about their issues. I mean, we do want to hear what citizens have to say, and we want to be sensitive to that. But if we don't give them an adequate amount of time, it's.
We do that through a motion. Did you?
Can we extend it from 3 to 5 minutes?
It's our committee.
It's your committee, you can do what you'd like.
So we just do it through a motion? That was the main question. Okay. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we extend the amount of time for citizens that take the time out of their schedules that come to present to us, 5 minutes,
3 to 5.
from 3 to 5 minutes.
There's a second.
So I think that we're looking at, I mean, this was a perfect example.
Mhm.
He didn't have enough time to give
Right.
us the background before he brought to the point where.
Yeah, all those four? Sorry.
Well, this is discussion time. We have discussion time after the second motion. So I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that.
we can't understand the context. So, because he's not given enough time, so. Appreciate it.
All those four? All those opposed? Nobody's opposed, the motion carries. Can you please put that in? Thank you.
And I will verify, I do believe there's something in the handbook for boards and commissions that says 3 minutes. But I will make sure if that's something we choose to extend.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, well, that
Thank
was
you.
another question, the December meeting. Last thing, December meeting. So typically, since it's going to be the middle to end of December, you know,
The next meeting would be on December 20th, which is the week of.
would anybody like to come?
Are you cooking?
Meeting.
Yes. So,
I had to,
so
I'm busy.
I vote to suspend the December 20th meeting.
second,
Second,
motion, 3,
Second.
don't do it again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so no meeting on so when's the next one then? Just
The next meeting will be January 17th of 2024.
January 17th. We will see you all in 2024. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas.
And congratulations, Rita.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
I, enjoy myself. I'll think of all of